it's really, the story here is, can these weaker teams just rise above and pick up another upset against some of these super strong teams?
MVP struggled to overcome Jin Air Green Wings. They managed to edge it out, but KT, no slouches. To the macro game especially, going to be a lot more difficult of an opponent. And I like how they're trying to set the tempo for the night with this team composition that they drafted against MVP.
We'll see if they can do it here going into game number 1 of MVP versus KT for our Tuesday LCK night. Join us right now on the Rift as we jump into it. Well, the KT fan club, they've always been known as one of the biggest, and they've come out in force tonight. Everybody holding up the Supreme Miraculous Excellent Boy banners. Okay, Smeb.
MVP looking to get some ward coverage down on KT's red side jungle. They want to scout out if Score is going to potentially just have one of the new Wraith variation starts, where you eat the Raptor camp early on. Provides a lot more flexibility for some of the jungler routes that you can take.
Waiting here in the brush, and Ed is going to face check this. We have Score around, and he's not going to be able to get too much damage done, but Ed forced to jump the wall, and we'll go back.
This is actually a really big victory, though, for KT. Ed's not going to get to the lane until later on, and he's going to be at a little bit of an experience deficit. Although perhaps I underestimate Camille's ability to grappling hook her way back to the lane in time.
Well, he's attempting to do that. Still looks like she might lose maybe one creep, if anything, one minion there. And we saw some pings going down on the blue side jungle of MVP as they thought as they were invading, maybe KT would get down some wards, but there's no vision there. So they don't really know exactly how Elise started. And she did start on those wraiths. Actually, Syndra helping out there. So going to get a quick start on there and then go to a red, head towards her blue.
Score opting for just a red camp clear into his wolves and then blue. So a much more standard route. A little bit peculiar that he's not being more greedy with his route, primarily because it's unlikely that he's going to be able to create any chaos in bottom lane, and they already know that he's not going to be able to find a counter gank down in bottom.
Nice bit of trading here from Ian, actually, getting Pawn down to about half health already. Then again, Pawn just trying to push and get enough money to buy that tier. We see Elise looking for a gank with the blasting plants, and here we go, trying to get on in there. Does miss the stun, gets the slow. It's really going to be down to this Cocoon, trying to really read it too much there, and Smeb just going to stroll on out of there like it's nothing. Not even blowing either of his summoners. No flash used.
And that has to hurt mentally if you're Beyond right now. He's coming in here to get his Gromp. Score seems to know the timing on this. This is absolutely fantastic.
Wow. Comes in. It looks like maybe Beyond got that smite. Yeah, he did. But this might be the first kill of the game. There you go. Smeb joining on in, gets first blood onto Beyond.
Smeb gets first blood onto Beyond. Now he's going to be able to head back to top lane. Lane is in a fantastic spot. You can see that Pawn, meanwhile, in mid lane, not under a lot of pressure. Actually did cancel his recall, though. A little bit interesting there. And meanwhile, Score is now going to be able to completely gut Beyond's left side jungle. And now Beyond only has one route. Forced to go to Golems, but when he does go to Golems, it's obvious that KT is going to know exactly where he is for about the next 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Score, veteran jungler here, knows exactly where Beyond was before going into the Gromp, which really opened that first kill. Beyond getting just way too fancy with that play, trying to flash and get the better angle on the Cocoon, assuming that Smeb would flash, but Smeb just so calm So collected, does not get caught out like there. And now you just see Score coming into mid, helping push. Obviously, Pawn wants to go for recall here, and will do so after this lane goes out.
Pawn going to be able to get the recall. Managed to have a little bit of a CS advantage before he does that. And meanwhile, up in top lane, talking about a CS advantage, it's about 13, so we can just watch this replay. So Score is able to track Beyond through the fog of war. He knows that where his movements are and when he would be starting the Gromp, and just wards before he hops over. Smeb, because he was able to save his flash from the earlier gank, now able to flash to close the distance and pick himself up that first blood.
Just unbelievable game sense. There was no vision there for you guys who were, you know, just watching for the first time. He just knew that he had to go there, essentially. Now we see Beyond trying again. They know that Smeb did burn his flash for that kill. So if they can land a Cocoon, maybe we could see a kill go down onto Smeb. Big wave here.
The problem is that Smeb should have an inclination that that could have been happening. And the reason for that is because the enemy bottom lane recalled, and the fact that KT knew that there would be no reason for Beyond to be on the right-hand side of the map would only suggest that Beyond has to be top in some sense. So a lane gank is a very real possibility. And Beyond going for a high variance play, not really paying off.
And you can see how fast Smeb reacted to it too. As you were saying, he had an idea that it was coming in, but also when you're trying to gank a Renekton, he can just dash away as long as his reaction time is fast enough, as it was for Smeb. So gets away easily, Beyond getting no damage down, Smeb putting down more deep wards. You can see Elise is down in there on those wolves. And so far, even just taking a look at the mini-map, it seems like even Mata heading towards mid, helping ward up the right side of the river just to keep Pawn a little bit safer there. And they definitely have map control at this point in time.
Top lane, a little bit of a trade coming out. Ed seems to be getting the better end of it. Actually going to cast his ultimate.
And he's going deep onto this one. Smeb, he was forced to fight there, pops his own ultimate. And in the end, Ed is the one who backs off first with that mobility. There is a control ward up top. You can see that Ed is playing it very safely. And he is going to spot him on this ward right here. It's about to run out, actually. And it seems like maybe they want to go for the dive. You can see Pawn actually rotating up top too, but Ed already knows about this. Will have to dash away, and there he does go.
Still manages to zone Ed off of the entire wave, so it's still a pretty big success nonetheless. Now with blue buff being up, Ian, he's over here, but we're going to see them potentially contest the blue. Syndra not able to pick it up. Score secured that blue buff, and meanwhile in bottom lane, Deft and Mata going aggressive. They know that they can do this because it's likely that Beyond had to come over onto the left-hand side of the map. And with every lane going the way that it is, KT is already at a 1.5k gold lead almost. And we're only 8 minutes into the game, and this is just through CS and that first blood.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the way that KT games go. Not a big surprise. Really just outplaying in every way so far. Even in bot lane, you can see a small CS gap beginning to form. About 13 CS ahead is Deft over Maha. And down in the bot lane, I mean, you see a bit of trading here, but Max has shown that he can essentially play any champion. And we're going to see if his Tom Kench is up to snuff as well. You see blowing the curtain call here. Actually gets that fourth shot onto Deft, so Deft going low. But Max also a bit low here in the lane.
Deft and Mata probably still feeling relatively safe against a gank if Beyond were to appear. So it's not like they're worrying too much. Score at Gromp. And it looks like KT's actually just going to recall anyway. They hand over the buff, and now you see Score coming down. Probably just going to get the Scuttle Crab as his bottom lane resets. But then, Deft and Mata actually cancel their recall. And I love what Score's doing right now. He's intentionally not attacking the ward, just letting the control ward disable it. He's going to pick up the dragon.
That's a cool part about those control wards. If he takes it out, then they're like, okay, he's sticking around. So they might want to go for this, but there's no vision when you put down the control ward anyway. Pawn really wants to kill that, and he does, both of them getting the control wards out there. But the Infernal Drake is the first Drake going over to KT, who already have a pretty significant lead. Things only going better for them so far.
Meanwhile, up in top lane, almost a 30 CS lead for Smeb here. And the Camille pick not really doing too much for MVP this time around. Looks like Beyond might path his way back up to top lane. He's been devoting a lot of attention to it so far this game. And basically at a cost, as his bottom lane now is also beginning to fall behind. Ian is stabilizing in mid lane, but the real problem is going to come in about 3-5 minutes from now, when KT begins to have their first core items almost completed on some of their champions. MVP not really going to have a way to resist against that.
Yeah, looking for the first blood turret now in bot lane. Got 4 members down here. They were able to rotate faster than Syndra and Elise, but not going to be able to get that just yet. Still putting on the pressure, score recalling and brush. Meanwhile, a little bit of a trade up in top. You can see that Smeb getting the better end of that trade once again. It seems like maybe KT has figured out that matchup, bringing in the Renekton. It's working well so far.
Renekton generally considered to be in a pretty bad spot right now, but Smeb managing to make it work up in the top lane. Another thing about this is, first off, how often do you get to practice Camille? And then secondly, when you do get to practice Camille, how often is it that it's against a Renekton?
Maybe never. This might be his first time. I mean, let's be real, it's not a very highly picked champion up in the top lane in both cases. And there was a bit of a gank being set up in the top lane, but just going to go for a recall here is Camille, not wanting to stick around. You can see Smeb trying to push this in. Actually, Ed decides to stay, but then really a bit of hesitation here on what he should do. Looks like he will stick around in the end of it, but here comes Pawn. Nothing's going to spot him just yet.
Looking very indecisive right now. Pawn coming up, doesn't have his ultimate available, but Smeb able to dish out tons of damage.
Man. This might just be a kill from Smeb onto Ed just by himself. He almost gets it. Trying to dodge the stun here. He does get hit in the end after that ultimate, but it's not enough. Flashing that last Q, and he does get away. Unbelievable. Everything blown there on Smeb by the Syndra, but does survive.
Does survive indeed. You can see that Maha and Max were running up in case they wanted the Abyssal Voids to somehow join a fight, but now they're coming back down to bottom lane. Smeb recalling right now. Deft just going to accept his fate.
Yeah, he's given up. Actually surprised that he goes for the arrow. Maybe he wants to eke out a couple more CS, even fails to do that, but he was pretty screwed either way. I mean, there was the Voids, the teleport all coming in, but still a lot used to just take out Deft, and they get that first blood turret as well.
Pretty big victory nonetheless, and meanwhile, Pawn and Score now going to be able to take away another blue buff from Ian, and Score's going to be able to put another hurt onto Beyond's left side jungle with the counter jungling.
Another notch in his belt, even checking the Wolves. As Beyond makes his way over, even Mata joining the party. Up near top lane, Ed decides to show his face again at his tower. Well, the one thing he didn't know is that it's not his tower, in fact, as everybody in KT is coming up here trying to claim it as their own. Trying to jump on over, gets the stun onto Score. There's the cocoon, lots of damage going down onto Spore, but Score actually does survive somehow, some way. They turn it around, get the 2 kills. And now it's up to Smeb to try to get out of this one as Tom Kench and Jin trying to join in. It's not going to happen.
Smeb not able to get out there, but that was a really good turn of events for KT. Looked like Beyond was going to be able to pick up a kill there, but then got locked up last second. And meanwhile, the amount of resources and attention MVP is being forced to devote to the top lane is letting Deft get all of this free farm and shove in an entire wave to bottom. You can see Edge trying to get down there, and now Pawn beginning to move up to top lane. Doesn't really have too much damage, just has a catalyst and a tier, but still, Maha and Max would have to be really careful.
The rotations never stop, and even a teleport coming in behind the turret out of Smeb. They want these 2 kills badly, and they should easily be able to get it here. Getting the stun onto Max. Maha flashing and healing away, as well as an exhaust being used, so he will survive. But that is 3 summoners for his life.
summoners for his life, and now Smeb going to be able to stay up in top lane. This is going to demand Ian stay here as well, and you can see that Maha being extremely indecisive because he does still have his curtain call available to him. But, I mean, at this point, KT are picking and pulling at MVP all over the map and creating too much pressure for them to really handle. Infernal Drake coming up in 20 seconds. So a little bit surprised that Smeb hasn't recalled yet, but perhaps just going to shove in this final wave before he recalls, as he's going to want to make his way down to Dragon. Or instead, he's just going to run there now instead, opting out of recalling.
Making his way down. This is about to spawn here, and MVP are grouping up to try to deal with this. Ed was thinking about jumping onto Deft. Cocoon does not land. There's the curtain call. Should be able to block all of those shots onto Depths. That Mata does. All 5 members of MVP now looking to make a rotation towards this Drake. And KT is a bit split up. We'll see if they can stop the onslaught. Void's coming down onto Pawn. He's trying to ultimate out of there. Does actually misses it. Does not get in that zone. They might be able to get onto Pawn here. There he does go down. So Pawn getting caught out.
Pawn is going to go down. The Infernal Drake not going to be taken quite yet, but KT using that opportunity of how much MVP invested into killing Pawn to apply a lot of pressure to the mid-tier 1 turret, and Score might be looking for a steal here. If he can get it, it would definitely be worth it.
Trying to walk on in, wants to get that burst. There's the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, does not do much, and down goes Score, and now they might be able to turn this here. Mata being ulted by Syndra, and now Smeb on the run as well as Deft, and they give over the Infernal Drake as well as 2 kills, so not the best turn of events here for KT.
Very big turnaround for MVP. They've begun to stabilize a little bit, but the real problem's going to come once the recalls happen for Smeb, once Deft basically gets back onto the field and the items break out. And you can see that in this replay, Score went into the Dragon, but MVP turned their attention on him quick enough so that he wasn't able to just burst it down and go for a smite, or even have a smite fight. And then Mata, a little bit overextended there, got caught out. But meanwhile, in mid lane, while that was happening, Smeb was able to shove a lane in, so they couldn't really make use of a wave to try to pressure KT's first middle tier 1 turret, beyond missing yet another Cocoon onto Smeb.
No dashers available there for Renekton, and used it to clear the wave, so if he had landed that Cocoon, it might have been his life, but either way, does miss that one. Pawn coming on in, Ian being a sneaky snake in the brush. Can he land it? There's the stun. Not going to commit though.
Not that much damage coming out from Ian right now. Pawn does have the Roa, already has the Merc Treads, and another Null Magic Mantle. Very defensive build path from Pawn. He knows that he doesn't need to be the primary source of damage early on. He can just scale up and have a defensive item kit. A lot of the damage is going to come out from the Renekton, the Kha'Zix, and Ashe.
You can see Score sticking around once again, looking for gank onto Ad. Forcing a bit of trading here is Smeb. Even a control ward put down. You can see he goes into the brush to hide that fact that he puts that down. Score still sticking around that top lane, but it looks like Ad is going to rotate down towards the Rift Herald for just a moment.
Now KT has basically entered into a point in the game where they're just constantly trying to farm up and get to that first 4 item and a half or 2 items across all of their champions. That's where their team composition is going to be strongest.
Well, here comes the stun. Leaping on in is Kha'Zix, trying to get that hit there with the ultimate. Void's coming on in, but just for defense, as KT does not commit just yet. Jan's trying to get a Cocoon down, and that he does, but 4 members here. They're going to try to turn it around. Being devoured there by Max, in fact, does save his life. Ad now coming in. Oh, nice hit there by Deft to pick up that kill, and oh, looks like MVP has just committed way too much. 4 members going down. You can see some kills on the right side did happen as well, and things kind of getting out of hand now for MVP.
Things went from 0 to 100 for KT just now, and they're going to rotate into mid lane while leaving Deft to free farm up in top. They know no threat can really come to him. Score taking this opportunity to, again, get more counter jungling down onto Beyond. And all of a sudden, KT just burst the game wide open. They're gonna get mid-tier 1 turret. They just got top-tier 1 turret. They have a little bit over a 5,000 gold lead now, and we just hit 20 minutes.
Let's take a look at the replay here. You can see that Beyond's trying to get something, but probably didn't see all the members of KT grouped up.
Yeah, Maha basically goes for the curtain call here, but Smeb able to just get outside of the range, didn't quite get locked up by Max. And Maha right in the back there, you can see that Pawn able to get on top of him, lock him up, and quickly make work of him. And Ian, with basically no ability to enter into that fight, wasn't able to provide much assistance to his team.
Yeah, and I feel like the camera highlighting Max here, I feel like he's not having the worst game of Tahm Kench ever. I feel like more its teammates are getting him in trouble. He's doing his best to try to save everybody, get in position to set up kills, but I feel like the rest of his team is failing him at this point. So MVP forced to play from behind here, a situation that many teams have found common against KT so far. KT very comfortable to play from ahead, that is.
And right now, I really like how Pawn is itemizing the Roa into the Abyssal Scepter. He realizes that, again, he doesn't need to be the majority of the damage. He can take a more defensive, tanky route that enables him to sustain.
Oh boy, and Pawn just getting caught out there. Not sure.
Doesn't quite sustain there.
Yeah, well, it's hard to do so. And look at this trade down on bot. Ed thinking that he could take a trade. Oh, the arrow just barely missing. Nice dodge there from Ed. We're going to have that dash just so close to getting that stun off. But just barely will Ed escape with his life.
Ed does manage to escape there. Comes at the cost of his flash. Another dragon coming up in 30 seconds, though, and it's yet another Infernal Drake. So a little bit unfortunate for KT that they couldn't pick Ed up just there. Now MVP, I'm not quite sure about them committing to trying to pressure mid-tier 1 here. If they take too much damage, it's going to leave them susceptible to KT being able to easily push them away from even trying to contest the dragon.
Yeah, we didn't have the enchanted crystal arrow, so maybe they felt a little bit more comfortable, but you could see that after the minion, that one minion wave does go down, they immediately back off, prepare for this Infernal Drake. Now we have 5 members of both teams all grouping on up. We should have another fight around this dragon.
Dragon is extremely important for both teams right now. Would be the second Infernal Drake. And Beyond has to be really careful.
Look at this play, jumping on over with the blasting plant, and immediately he goes down. Motto was just the bait there in the long dress saying, hey, come get me, but he was the one that got.
So you're trying to tell us that Elise is into girls?
Yeah, looks that way.
All right.
We learned something new today. Coming on in here, oh boy, the Enchanted Crystal Arrow comes down, and Max is going to be one dead frog. And oh, well, here we go again. Teleport coming in. This is what I'm talking about. KT really loves to commit in here, but Smeb actually being outplayed there by Ian. Really nice job. Oh. And now Pawn going to go down to the curtain call and Ed doing a bit of damage. So KT may be committing a little bit too much.
Yeah, KT being a little bit overeager with their advantage here leads to them getting picked off a little bit. Deft actually even having to flash away there. If he went down, that would surely have been the Baron. Also, if Score goes down, that could lead to the Baron.
Trying to land that Cinder Stun just barely does not.
They might go for a Baron cheese. MVP might be extremely desperate right here. You can see they can't make use of mid lane, can't make use of bottom lane, and they are. They're going for a Baron all in.
Yeah, and this is spotted, of course. Tahm Kench going to join on up here, as well as add this 5 members, and you can see Score, he's the only one that has the opportunity to come in and steal it, but he will be zoned out. That is going to be Baron going over to MVP. And that's about 2 or 3 mistakes by KT giving that one up.
Yeah, KT made one mistake after another despite securing the Infernal Drake, and it's going to cost them a lot right now because what the Baron is going to do is it's going to enable MVP to weather the storm of when KT would be strongest relative to their item spikes, and it's going to basically deny KT from being able to use their advantages that they gained to try to establish any further of a lead over MVP because of the minions. They can't push the waves anymore. and that's going to let MVP glide themselves to a point in the game where their champions and the base scaling and everything is going to begin to overthrow KT.
Now you can see Jin picking up that Edge of Night, has to be very careful, but actually it might be Smeb that has to be careful. There are 3 members of MVP here. If they can land something, trying to get that down, and there it is, the Deadly Flourish. That's going to be the kill. And one mistake to another, as now that's going to be another tower going down as well as Smeb.
Smeb being a little bit greedy there, didn't try to get away sooner and ended up paying the price for it, and now MVP gonna be able to easily raise this bottom tier 2 turret. You can see Ed escorting the wave in mid lane, and without Smeb, KT is gonna be forced to be divided. It's gonna be very difficult for them to stabilize.
This is pretty unbelievable. I mean, we're seeing MVP at 3-3 so far, I think, in LCK 2017 Spring. Whereas KT is undefeated in the series, but they're putting up a fight. We're now at about even gold in this game. We'll see what else MVP can get with this Baron. So far, they've gotten 2 turrets and Smeb.
And while you mention the fact that we're at even gold, again, it's important to remember that even though the gold score is even and KT has a slight gold lead, they're not ahead. MVP's team composition more effective with gold, more efficient, and so KT is almost considerably behind right now. They're going to lose another turret right here. This should be able to close the gold gap that we're seeing, but KT are going to actually be hard-pressed to find a way back into this game.
Well, they're going to look for a pick here on the left side, perhaps. On the bottom side, Pawn, he gets stunned up again. And Mata even forced to flash away down towards the bottom side of the map here. Now another turret being pushed. This could be the 4th one of the game. Can they land another stun? They do onto Smeb. No curtain call this time around, as they already used it to try to get onto Pawn. But they're going to take those 2 extra turrets at top and just go for a quick Baron recall and regroup.
Gonna regroup a little bit. They have a very big wave in bottom waiting to be taken. Deft's gonna shove another gigantic wave back into MVP, and right now KT are basically stuck between a rock and a hard place where Smeb is their primary engagement tool outside of Deft, and that's not something that they can really rely on right now because he's not a big enough threat anymore that MVP should be afraid of him. And because Deft can't engage, because Tahm Kench has the QSS and he can eat one of his own allies, it's just extremely difficult for KT to find an opening. And they've basically been reduced to a pick comp right now.
And you can see that's exactly what they're trying to set up, but they've been unsuccessful so far. Oh, here we go. Avoid's coming down onto Pawn. We do have score around, but they have to be careful. The flash exhaust onto Pawn. Here's Ed. Gets the slow down. There it is. The ultimate coming on in, but a burst damage coming down actually onto Max. He will be the first to go down. Turning this around big time. 3 kills in a row. KT able to turn that one.
KT basically pull a rabbit out of a hat right there. Don't know how Pawn lived. Things might get a lot worse now. Maha forced to flash away. Pawn living there is so big right now because now it's enabling KT to turn this entire game around on its head once again. They're going to shove, probably going to be able to get bottom tier 2 turret here, and then they're going to be able to set their attention to the Mountain Drake and secure that as well. So a little bit of a roller coaster here in game number 1 where KT went from being all but out of it to now being back in the driver's seat.
One fight is able to turn it around, and as you mentioned, just barely Pawn surviving was so huge. Able to survive long enough for all of his teammates to come and help him and win that fight. I would love to get a look at that replay. We do see the Mountain Drake being taken here, so that's now 2 Infernal Drakes and a Mountain Drake going over to KT. So any objective is going to be burst down extremely quickly at this point in the game.
Baron coming up in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. And if we're just looking at how the minion waves are, KT basically going to rely on the upcoming Baron fight to find another opening in this game. They're not going to be able to make use of bottom wave, Smeb probably going to have to go there after the recall, but because of the distance to the bottom inhibitor turret, it's not like he's going to be able to coordinate or pressure via any sort of a split push, and they're not going to be able to make use of top lane. So they're reduced to controlling the vision around Baron and just worrying about mid. So in this replay here, you can see that Score is right here. The Abyssal Voyage comes in. Beyond shoots his cocoon, can't quite hit Score, and then they fail to lock up Pawn in time. And by the time they do, Mata comes there, able to give him the shield. And then once Smeb arrives, Pawn able to just basically dance in and out of damage, and they pick up those 3 kills, and that's why they're back in the game now.
It was almost a look of desperation in that fight out of MVP because they knew it all relied on bursting down Pawn as fast as possible. So all 3 members are right on top of each other. That AoE coming out of Smeb and out of Mata as well was just gigantic. And they're able to take him out. So here we go, trying to teleport on in here is Pawn, but Maha does get away, has the Edge of Night. Teleport coming in from Smeb, it is spotted, but he is still behind them. Can they make this work? A forced teleport this time around from Ed. He's down there on the bottom right. Ward is going to spot him here.
Well, top laners using teleport here seems like it's more advantageous for KT when looking at bottom lane. Ed getting locked up.
Yeah, they're not going to fully commit here. They don't know exactly where the other members are. You do see Ian coming in on the left side. Curtain call being forced out here. Smeb going to eat all of those. Bit of a mistake there. Actually jumping in onto Score all alone is Ed. That might be a big mistake. Oh, well, he is able to turn that around, only burning his GA for that, trying to get out in there. But the Devour from Max, can he save Zed life? It does look like he will. And so they're able to pick off Score and keep it at 5-4 so far for MVP.
It does come at the cost of a Guardian Angel, but the really big thing about picking off Score there is now KT has no smite available to them. So KT,
they're coming in.
gonna need to win this team fight if they want to have a chance.
You do see the Baron going on over to MVP, but KT, can they win the fight? That's the question. Huge burst damage coming out from Pawn. Smeb able to clean up the kill onto Tom Kench. Now you see both Syndra and Jin on the run. Can they actually put the kills down? It looks like they're just going to let them go and go for the objectives here.
Looks like Pawn and Mata set their attention on top tier 2 turret, and even if you can't deny the Baron, if you can't attack the Baron, one thing that you can do following it up is attack it indirectly. Take away all the minions so it doesn't have anything to buff.
Oh, boy.
Turns out that Deathfire Touch is pretty good mastery. Able to bring Mata down there.
Pretty cool.
Pretty tilt-inducing. I like the fact that Mata has 3 control wards in his inventory right now.
Yeah. Well, anything to tilt KT at this point would be nice. Good for MVP here.
Interesting build with the Liandry's Torment actually on Ian. A little bit surprising given the fact that Pawn itemized so much magic resistance early on, and you have to assume that Score and Smeb would later on. So Liandry's generally will give more damage than Void Staff if your opponents don't itemize too much MR and stay at relatively low MR values. But went for it anyway. A little peculiar to see. We can see that the full lethality Jin build with the Last Whisper is in effect for Maha.
Yeah, maybe Ian just wants to burst down some of these targets that don't have the magic resist. You look at Score, he doesn't have much at all. So maybe if Score jumps in, he can just one-shot him essentially if he does land the stun, or even if he doesn't. But either way, an interesting choice. You can see MVP now grouping up with the Baron in mid. It's the only tier 2 turret that has not been taken out by MVP is this mid one. And now joining up from the jungle. We'll see if they can put some pressure on here.
Have to be really careful. Ed is the one they need to be worried about. He doesn't have his Guardian Angel, so it's almost like he's down an item.
Oh, they want to force this going hard onto Max with the Enchanted Crystal Arrow. Smeb though at about half health. The Redemption does heal him up just a bit, but here comes Ed. Look at Smeb's health all up there. Pawn getting stunned now, a huge amount of damage. Zonius will save him. Oh, big hit there by Mata onto Depth. That's going to be 2 kills by MVP now as they're able to turn this around big time after the engagement. Well, hold that thought, there's more to come. Score being held up here by Ed. The kill will go on to Ian, and he wants even more blood. Wants one more on Tamada. Here comes Beyond as well. There's another, and that's 4 kills for MVP now. That should be at least the inhibitor.
That's 4 kills for MVP. It might actually be the game. I'm not entirely certain. 25 seconds remaining on Dev. Smeb's gonna need to be a hero. Ed has teleport available. He can recall, he can get an elixir, come in, teleport on that minion, and that should actually be it for game number 1. MVP upsetting KT.
Big time, doing very, very well. They might even go for the extra kill on a Smeb. There they will. That's gonna be game 1, going over to MVP here in this series.
And I don't really know what to say about this. KT started off so strong. They had every advantage that they could possibly want for this team composition. They had the kills on the carries that they needed them to be on moving into the mid game, but then a lot of just over aggressiveness costing them at such key moments in the game.
They're going to have to go back to the drawing board here if they don't want to get 2-0'd by MVP. Maybe change up the draft system. Maybe not let the Camille get through. Picking that Renekton, an interesting choice. Looked good early on, but as you said, didn't really do much towards the later parts of that game, especially once it got to even.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me is why teams would even enable the Camille to get through. It just basically seems so disrespectful in a way, because there's nothing to really lose by banning her, but there's everything to gain if you do have her. And so I can't really understand it. KT, if you're looking at it from their perspective, they should consider that they're better almost at every single lane than their opponents. So then why would you not just want something completely standard to occur?
That's the big question. And you can see that everybody in the MVP booth was also trying to comfort Beyond there. He didn't have the best game. He went something like 0-6 and 5. A lot of failed ganks, got really outplayed by score, but they were still able to win the game in part due to the draft. So no doubt we're going to be going to the analyst desk here in just a second, guys. So once we do get that, we'll be jumping into that. And afterwards, we will be jumping into game 2. So stay tuned. We'll be